In this chapter, we learn that Marley is feeling down because Judy makes a decision that kind of turns her world upside down. Um, and we also get more insight into Betty Jean, which is their family's housemate. It's called Chapter 7, A New Roommate. Every Saturday, we had to clean the house from top to bottom. It wasn't my favorite thing to do, but it wasn't so bad either, not since Judy and I got a record player last Christmas. Now every Saturday morning, we put on our latest album and sang along. This week, it was South Pacific. I like singing. The song gives you the words so you don't have to think about what to say. Sometimes I dream about being in the church choir, but that involves getting up and standing in front of a group of people, which is not something I like to do. Every time I thought about how I had agreed to talk during our presentation, I felt sick. Even reciting prime numbers didn't calm me down. I hadn't even told Judy about it yet, since I'd already decided 20 times to tell Liz no on Monday. But then I'd think of that math book and change my mind, especially since last year. I'd spent a week building up my courage to ask the librarian for a book on magic squares, and when I did, she said they didn't carry books about witchcraft. "Mother," Judy said, bringing me back to the world of scrubbing tubs and toilets. Is it okay for me to move into David's room?" What? David might be in college, but that didn't mean he wasn't ever coming back, did it? I asked him before he left, and he said he didn't mind, said Judy. I mind, but I didn't say it. I just scrubbed harder. Mother stopped shining the mirror over the sink. What about when he comes home for the holidays, Christmas and spring break? I'll just move back in with Marley then. She can have the double bed. I'm happy with the twin. All right then. Mother went back to work. No, I said. I don't want you to go. Judy laughed. Marley, I'm not going anywhere, just down the hall. You'll love having some space to yourself, said Mother. You'll see. But I knew she was wrong. As soon as we were finished with our chores, Judy moved into David's room. We shared a room my entire life, and it only took her a half an hour to disappear. So right now my thinking voice is making a connection to my sister and I, because we shared a room our entire life, and the first time she moved out, I was heartbroken. I felt like my entire world disappeared because I didn't know how to handle not sharing a room. So I definitely connect with Marley here. Again, good readers make connections when they're reading. That night, it was as quiet as a graveyard in my room. Good simile. Even the roaring of the lions couldn't break the silence. I missed the sound of Judy breathing, the squeak of the bed as she rolled over, even the ticking of her alarm clock. Finally, I took my blanket and snuck down the hall into my brother's old room. The moon shone in the window, and I could just make out Judy asleep on the bed. I crept inside and curled up on the floor. It was hard and uncomfortable, but I fell asleep easily, listening to Judy's quiet snoring. Marley! I woke up to Judy staring at me. The sun was shining in the window. Why are you sleeping on the floor? She demanded. I shrugged. Marley, I changed rooms because I wanted to be alone. Tonight, make sure you stay in your own bed. Judy stepped over me and marched off to the bathroom. I picked up the blanket and went back to my room. My sister, the only one I could always talk to, didn't want me around anymore. I didn't know what I was going to do. Sally wasn't pleased either, not when Liz told her we were working together. But Marley always works with me, she said. I'm right here, I wanted to yell. I can hear what you are saying about me. Well, you are so nice, Liz said smoothly, to make sure a new girl like me doesn't have to work alone. Sally opened her mouth and closed it again. I'll work with you, Sally, said Nora. Sally shrugged and Nora beamed. What I wouldn't give to be like Liz, to be the one who could make Sally speechless. My inner voice right now is thinking, what does she mean to make Sally speechless and be like Liz? I wonder if it's because Liz seems to have an easier time talking than Marley. That's what I'm trying to connect right now in my brain with my thinking voice. That afternoon, when I got home from school, Betty Jean was in the kitchen making sweet tea. Everyone has their own recipe, but Betty Jean makes it by boiling water in a saucepan over the stove. She adds in a pinch of baking soda, and then when the water is boiling, she puts in the tea bags all tied together. Once it's drink enough, she pours it into a pitcher and adds a cup of simple syrup. She stirs enough water to fill the pitcher to the top and then stirs it again. Betty Jean was just getting ready to put it into the fridge when she realized I was watching her. "Oh, Marley, I didn't see you," she said. "Would you like a glass of tea?" What I really wanted was for my sister to come down and talk to me, but she was up in her new room, even though I knew she heard the front door open when I came in. But I didn't want to sit in my room alone, and I guess I was a little thirsty, so I nodded. I sat down at the table while Betty Jean filled a tall glass with ice and poured in the tea. "Do you mind if I sit down for a minute?" she asked as she put the tea down in front of me. "The heat makes my ankles swell." Of course I didn't mind. Betty Jean was a hard worker. All the clothes were folded and put away, dinner was cooking in the oven, and the living room floor was so clean I'd be willing to eat off of it. I was embarrassed she'd even asked me, like I was her boss or something, and I gestured for her to go ahead. Betty Jean pulled out a chair and sat down. It was hot, and she used the flower apron to wipe the sweat from her face. I wondered why she didn't pour herself a glass of tea, then remembered that there seemed to be an unspoken rule that she could cook our food but never taste it, kind of like one about the girls and math and satellites. So my thinking voice right now is trying to connect that unspoken rule. What do we think that means, an unspoken rule? Think about it. You could be asked questions later. It made me mad, thinking about that. Before I knew it, I jumped up and poured another glass of tea. Betty Jean looked surprised when I held it out to her, but she took it. "Thank you, Marley." She drank half the glass in one long gulp, then wiped her mouth daintily and said, "Did you have a nice day at school?" "I'm doing a presentation in history," I said, and then sat down, embarrassed. I never spoken to her before. "Good for you," said Betty Jean. I counted prime numbers in my head until I realized she wasn't going to ask me anything else. We sat like that for a long time, silent, but not bad silent, just quiet. When I was done with my tea, I snuck a look at Betty Jean. She was about my mother's age, with big brown eyes and high cheekbones. Her skin was dark and smooth, and her temples was just a bit of gray. She was staring off into the distance, thinking of something else, but when she felt my gaze on her, she looked over at me and smiled. I smiled back. Turns out, Betty Jean wasn't just plain water after all. She had a twist of lime that was all her own. What do you think that means? She wasn't just plain water. I think it has something to do with Betty Jean having personality, some kind of personality, because she's staring into the distance, and Marley's done that before to try and gather her thoughts. So I think Marley's realizing that there are people that are like her and have this unspoken rule they need to follow. And to Marley, it's speaking in front of others, and to the African Americans and other colored folks in this time, it was the same thing. They speak when spoken to type of stuff, and Marley doesn't think that's fair, and she's starting to realize that Betty Jean has a personality despite all this. After dinner, I sat in bed, trying to figure out what to do about JT and his homework. Sure, he always thanked me and told me I was a nice girl, but I'd expected more. He never brought me candy or asked me to go to the movies or did any of the things a boyfriend was supposed to do. Then again, he wasn't really my boyfriend. I was pretty sure you had to talk to have one of those. Also, I didn't suppose those Soviet scientists who had sent up Sputnik had gotten where they were by cheating. If I wanted to work on a top-secret space project someday, I couldn't have any blemishes on my record. Not to mention that I knew cheating was just plain wrong. But every time I resolved to hand JT a blank piece of paper, I wondered if this would be the day he came to his senses and asked me out. I had decided to give him just a little more time when there was a knock at the door. Without waiting for me to answer, Judy poked her head into the room. "You got a minute?" I nodded. Judy held up a covered bird's cage. "I heard Daddy say he hasn't had much time for Pretty Boy lately." That was Daddy's pet parakeet. He usually kept him in the living room. I kept my eyes on the parakeet. I was still too angry to look at Judy, too worried that if I started talking I might say something I couldn't take back. Do you want to keep him in here with you? Judy asked. Daddy said it was okay. I shrugged. Judy set him down by the dresser. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry, Marley, she said. I've been so upset about not having any school, not seeing my friends, and wondering how I'm going to get to college if I can't even start 11th grade, that I haven't really been thinking about you. It was embarrassing. I was almost 13. I shouldn't need my older sister to fuss over me or tell me what to do, but I did. Without her, I was afraid I'd just get quieter and quieter until even Mother and Daddy didn't remember I was there. All of a sudden, Judy leaned over and gave me a hug. I tried not to melt into it, tried to stay stiff and cold, but my sister gives really good hugs. Birdie boy, the parakeet sang. Birdie boy, come back, I begged. Please. I can't, said Judy. It's not personal, Marley. I just need some more space. You'll get used to it. Maybe she was right. Maybe I would, but I didn't have to like it. Alright, so now you guys will move on to answering Chapter 7 questions in your packet, your chapter packet. If you have any questions, don't forget to email us. Bye.